Hello everyone, welcome to Critical Hit. I'm David.
I'm Matthew.
And I'm Kyle.
And today we're going to be talking about Captain America: The Winter Soldier. In the aftermath of the alien attack on New York, Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, is living in Washington, D.C. and working closely and personally with the organization S.H.I.E.L.D., taking down foreign foes and trying to prevent more horrible attacks. And yet, the defensive measures that S.H.I.E.L.D. seems to be taking are a little bit suspicious. And as Director Fury begins to investigate these, he's attacked by a mysterious figure and assassin known only as the Winter Soldier. Okay, so what did you guys think of the movie?
I for one, loved it. I think it was really interesting to see a movie like this, especially after the hype of the Avengers, and just being like, how can any movie come back from that? I mean, you had the other movies coming before it, Iron Man 3 and Thor 2, which had their moments, but I would say they were okay. They were good scenes, but overall not like wow. They don't wow you.
Don't let the Loki fangirls hear you say that.
Right. But Captain America just comes out swinging, and like you guys probably have all heard about the raving reviews it's getting. Like, it's a really good action movie and really accurately portrays the character Captain America. I love it.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty fantastic, and especially when you compare it to the first Captain America, which, while it was really fun and I thought it was interesting on kind of a conceptual level, at the same time it's the kind of movie I don't think a whole lot of people would remember if it weren't part of the larger universe. But I think with this one, this is definitely a movie that stands very well on its own.
For me, there were a couple of things here, but first off, the movie was really fun because it combined a superhero story with an almost Tom Clancy kind of spy, espionage, government plot that's going on around him. And that was really great. But what I really, really enjoyed was seeing the character work being done here. Because after the Avengers, people will remember how great Bruce Banner, the Hulk, there was, how great Tony Stark was, how good Loki was, and the legions of fangirls that swept in there. But a lot of people were really disappointed with Cap or didn't think much of him. And after Hawkeye, he was kind of considered one of the least developed characters for the movie. And I felt that this actually delved into a little bit more of what it would be like for Cap to be in this modern world and to face these threats. But before we get into him as a character, I was particularly fond of what was done with Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, and thought that she kind of developed as a character in this one.
Well, I thought it was actually a pretty brilliant idea to have her be so close to Captain America in this movie, because with her they're very opposite in so many ways. I mean, whereas Captain America, he's very principled and very black and white, and yet she's a character who's really defined by her very shady past.
Right, it's the soldier and the spy.
Exactly, yeah, and so seeing how they sort of play off of each other, and even really how they manage to sort of connect despite their differences, I think that's actually the source of a lot of the character strength in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm just thankful that they gave her a character. I mean, in Iron Man 2, she was, let's be honest, like boobs that did kung fu. And then in Avengers, we get a little bit better. She has one cool scene with Loki, and that's kind of all the loving she gets. But in this movie, we finally have a female character in a superhero-ish setting that is a character. Like, you understand her thoughts, her feelings, and you also, for me at least, like, I finally got to appreciate her as one of the good guys.
Yeah.
She does things in this movie that you don't think, she's only doing this because she's on the job, or this is the best paying offer. But no, she's a good person at heart.
Yeah.
And she does things that even puts her, like, life or reputation on the line because it's the right thing to do. And I loved seeing that. Like you said, her small talk times with Captain America in the movie are some of my favorite scenes. Because they both were characters that really are different, but really connect in their difference.
Yeah.
Well, she also seemed to give a face to the whole espionage themes that were going on in the movie.
Well, yeah, and I think a big part of her character arc is actually as they're exposed to more and more of the espionage world and sort of the evils of it, she's sort of having to confront more and more of, this is something that she's been doing for so long, and sort of like, how much am I like these people and like Hydra, and what does this mean? What does this make me as a person?
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting to see that happening to actually a lot of characters in this movie. The thing I love so much about this Captain America movie is that there are actually a good amount of minor characters that get a lot of loving on screen. Like, you have a lot of, like, a handful of minor characters that all feel fully fleshed, and all feel like interesting people that you want to hear more about in the story.
Well, yeah, well, even Falcon.
Sam Wilson, the Falcon.
Yeah, Sam Wilson. Even though I think in a lot of ways his character was underutilized, at the same time, he worked so well in his relationship with Steve Rogers with Captain America.
Yeah.
Was because he was just the guy where even though they're from completely different time periods, they can just immediately relate to each other because he's sort of just like the standard everyday military man.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like with Steve Rogers in this new crazy world that he's trying to adapt to, he's found something something that he can still connect to.
Right.
And it made me really excited to see what they do with those characters' relationship in the franchise now.
Especially the way they ended that movie. It was really good to see this sidekick-ish character come alongside for Captain America to kind of have someone like a shoulder to help him at times.
Yeah.
Like it was nice to see someone else besides Captain America who just believes that good should fight evil. Like it was nice to see a new character with those aspects.
And that's been the difference between Falcon and a lot of people who get labeled as sidekicks. Falcon has always been much more of a partner for Captain America in the comics, and it was really cool to see the level of mutual respect that was going on between those two.
Absolutely.
And in a lot of ways, Falcon is kind of like the Captain America of this day and age.
Right.
And his commitment, those values, the kind of things that he strives to be, the person who he strives to be like, in the way that he would just join up with Captain America because Captain America said, please help me. That says a lot about his character. And
and just like, and it's not just them too. Like even the villains, we get actually some minor characters here that are going to be significant later on. Like they introduced Crossbones. I think it's Crossbones.
Crossbones?
Yeah, it's the guy at the very end who he's in the building and it collapses, and there's a scene where you see him taken to the hospital. Like he's, it looks like they're setting him up to be one of the Hydra characters from the comics way back when that fought Captain America routinely, named Crossbones. So it's interesting because
involved more recently in that Death of Captain America arc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because we have a lot of these SHIELD agents that are just given light and perspective. You don't feel like SHIELD's now this like questionable, shady thing, but more like good working soldiers who just happen to be working for a company that's secretly being corrupted.
Yeah.
There's these interesting scenes where you watch these people make the decision of, do I fight with Cap or do I fight with Hydra? Do I trust SHIELD or do I trust Captain America? And it's cool because you don't ever feel like anymore that these are just like people with badges running around with guns, but actual like people working for SHIELD. And I really appreciated all the attention that these minor characters got.
And speaking of minor characters, I think there was a guy named the Winter Soldier in the whole thing. And it's kind of ironic actually that I think that the one character who did come off as really, really underdeveloped was the guy they chose to grace the title with.
Right.
I mean, I'm a little reluctant to criticize him for it because it clearly, well, one, it really is just the title, and that doesn't really make the movie any better or worse.
Yeah.
No.
And two, obviously, it ends on a very clear cliffhanger as to what his character is going to do in the future. And
it could be worth it.
Then I think it could have been worth it, but at the same time, it was very odd how inconsequential he wound up being to the overall plot.
He really got things started and sparked the fire, but after a certain point,
but he was just a glorified henchman. Is the thing that's the thing? You could have even taken that whole backstory out of who he really is, and it would have changed remarkably little with the overall plot.
But the thing that's interesting too is even his big reveal of his backstory, that he's Bucky, comic fans obviously we're all going to know that going in.
Yeah.
But the movie didn't even betray it in a way that I expected. Captain America, I would argue, received it kind of well. He was like, oh, that sucks. But he moved on.
Yeah.
You don't really have like this character.
He really wanted to pull him out of it too. That was there.
Yeah. It almost felt overlooked to me. Almost.
Well, I kind of wonder what the whole writing process was, because what it felt a little bit like to me is what they did is they started out with a basic story where Bucky played a much bigger part, and then as the writing progressed, they thought about more and more that they wanted to include. It was kind of like their only real choice was to sort of shove him to the wayside.
Yeah. They made him, like, certainly he's the villain that Captain America fights in the movie, but at the same time, Captain America is really warring on Hydra.
I think it was kind of an interesting choice though, because it speaks a little bit to the espionage nature to everything, having him as a sleeper agent, having him be a victim as much as he is a villain.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
So in a way, I think that even if he may not have gotten some of the screen time that he should have, I think it still worked for the story that they were telling. The look alone was really great.
The look was solid. The metal arm, like the combat scenes between him and Captain America were fantastically choreographed.
Right.
I love the fight scene in the street. between just the way that they figured out how to incorporate the shield and the metal arm in a fight scene was really clever and thrilling to watch. It was a fun fight.
Well, this movie knows it's an action movie.
Absolutely.
And it brought that every time if there was a chase scene or a fight scene, it really reminded you, we know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, as for the title character, Captain America himself, one thing that I thought made this movie so much better, actually, is that better than the first one, is in the first movie it was pretty much just, him being him for 2 hours. I mean, he didn't really go through any change. It was just sort of him, like his personality naturally playing out. And even though he doesn't change a lot per se in the second movie, at the same time, you have him functioning in such a very different world that at least his personality now has room to clash with the new world that he's in.
Right. It's his mindset in the first movie. It's not interesting or really grabbing because everyone's mindset in that story is similar.
Exactly.
And what makes it so interesting in the new movie is that it's everyone's mindset's the opposite. Like you guys, I feel like this second movie is really good and far better than the first movie. But I'm interested to see why I think that. And the reason I've been interested by both Captain America movies personally is that I feel like both of them are telling different stories for different timelines in comics. Mm-hmm. So when Captain America, the character, was first invented, it's during World War II, and it's the golden age of comics.
Yeah.
And he's made to, for boys to just enjoy a kid story, and also designed for soldiers who are on the front lines reading. So that's why you get all those crazy stories about Captain America and characters like him punching Nazis in the face. And the first movie, I would say, is a very golden age movie. It's not deep. You don't get a lot of psychology or philosophy or adult themes that you'd expect.
I could argue with you on that, but
don't.
But it's very high paced action, and then us good guys fighting the Nazis and beating them up. And then you go from there to this movie, and it's a very, I would say, dark age of comics movie, where we have, there is no black and white. It's all gray, and who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. We're all kind of good, we're all kind of bad. And then you have Captain America, who's a golden age character in the dark age.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the movie so compelling and so amazing, is that you have this guy who says, no, there's good and there's evil. My job's to punch evil in the face. Mm-hmm. In a time where everyone else is saying, no, dude, that's not the way the world works. Everything's so confusing and crazy and blurry that you can't tell who's good and who's bad. We're all kind of good. We're all kind of bad. And Captain America's, he doesn't buy that. He's still true to his nature from the golden age.
Well, I think one reason why the character works so well in this context is when you just look at historically World War II, what's kind of unique about World War II as opposed to the world wars, especially now, and even for the most part before, is a lack of moral ambiguity with World War II that you just don't get. I mean, there was, obviously there's elements of, controversy and debate as is inevitable, but I mean, pretty much everyone agrees that the Nazis were bad. That's really the only war where I think you could pull a character out of that, then stick them today and have that much of a radical shift.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because Captain America's mindset doesn't upset our modern way of storytelling and viewing the world as much as you think it would.
Yeah.
So, Captain America comes across problems like Nick Fury, because Nick Fury thinks, no, S.H.I.E.L.D. can be rebuilt. This is just a problem.
Yeah.
And Captain America's like, no, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s done. There was evil in it, and evil needs to be purged.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you don't, at that moment, you don't necessarily just agree with Captain America. You think this is a dangerous thing that needs to be dealt with now. Mm-hmm. And it's just refreshing to me as a watcher, reader, listener of modern stories to have a character come back from an age past and say, no, there's good and there's evil, and that's how we need to deal with this world. Mm-hmm. Instead of having everyone so conflicted and befuddled by a world of grays.
So often you get the story that's telling you need to look to the past in order to understand the future. It's really nice to see a story that has someone from the past there to actually guide you.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not like Captain America's character doesn't change per se, but his morality is stable in both movies. And I think if you watch both movies with that perspective, it's really interesting and enriching. Because you get to see a different mindset, a different set of rules that nobody else is following in this age, that everyone was following in that age. So that's what's so interesting to me, is that we have these two different ages of storytelling, if you will, from the same medium of comic book stories being told in this movie. And both ages have very different views on morality and philosophy and what should you believe and what should you do. And they're meshing, but not in a way that clashes. It's not the Golden Age versus the Dark Age, but rather you have Captain America and you appreciate his views in a world that can't necessarily reconcile with them. And it's even more interesting when you think about Captain America's not the only one who's moved from the Golden Age to the Dark Age in this movie, because we have Hydra during the entire thing.
Yes.
And Hydra's really interesting to think about because unlike Captain America, Hydra's changed. Hydra's no longer, we're Nazis, we're going to attack you directly with our crazy Nazi airplane bombs. But instead, they've morphed into a sleeper cell virus system where they're like, no, we're going to take over the world from the inside out, where everyone wants us to rescue them.
Well, I think the greatest picture of that is Dr. Zola there,
Right.
becoming this artificial intelligence being. He's diminished so much, yet his impact has become so much more widespread.
Yeah, but isn't it so interesting that the good of the Golden Age hasn't changed, but the evil has? Like, it seems like there's, like, a message that, like, good is constant, but evil can, like, morph and change with the culture.
Huh.
And I'm just curious about that. Like, I'm interested in how can we tell more stories like this where you have the steadiness of this individual or a character like him or a idea that he possesses with a world that will constantly try to push, pull, and twist that away from him in every way it can.
Okay. Well, looking at the stages of what happened with comics, we had first the Golden Age,
right,
which were these very black and white, good versus evil superheroes.
Yeah.
And then we got into the Silver Age, which carried on that tradition, but also got more into the fun, high-flying adventure.
And because of, like...
But it also turned a little bit campy for a while there.
And just ridiculous superpowers and... And
lots of silly things happening. The Modern Age and then the modern Bronze Dark Age comic amalgam there, it kind of scoffed at the Silver Age, and the Golden Age seemed to get tossed in there as well. And so the idea was almost a rejection of all of that as something simplistic and trite and silly. And so we developed Watchmen. We developed the Dark Knight Returns. Batman Year One, and all of these darker stories with flawed heroes or where no one's actually a hero.
Yeah.
And that became a thing for a while, and it turned into then how can we get more gore on a page, and how can we make creepy characters to the point where we have Carnage as a villain.
Well, we reached a point where anti-heroes were our heroes.
Exactly, and that was the best we would get.
We lost the stories of the Golden Age. And it's interesting that even though now we're still in the Dark Age, I would argue that we're starting to see the beginning of that age into something else. With stories like these, where we're harkening back to the past and thinking about how did we used to approach these things, and how do those things relate to the modern day setting.
Well, I think that what this story does, and what good stories that want to synthesize two different ages or two different things, it recognizes the validity.
There you go.
I'm the man of the Golden Age, because we're thinking about who these people fought.
Yeah,
these were the Nazis. That's actually when you look at what Cap had to face, it's a lot worse than what a lot of these modern Age of Comics people had to square off against. Cap's facing Nazis and crazy sci-fi tech and lots of really, really horrible things.
Yeah.
Like many of the Golden Age heroes had to face. There was a lot of stuff that if you look at it from within that historical context, it becomes a lot darker than we actually give it credit for. And so if you are willing to just kind of step out of the modern frame of reference just for a minute, and to approach it a little more objectively, you'll discover it's a lot richer than you thought. And there's a commonality already in the darkness there that you can make these two things work together.
Well, I mean, and I think part of the point even was that, I mean, even though it functions very different in the present day, at the same time, Hydra during World War II versus Hydra, in modern day, I was gonna say America, but like the modern day world, their goal is still the same.
Yes.
So I think there's an element of constancy
Yeah.
that I think that just playing around with these scenarios brings out.
Definitely. And it's interesting to see these ages are influencing each other. So like I said, Hydra has been clearly influenced by the Dark Age, by postmodernism, to become something else, and to really take to heart the philosophy of where one of us falls, two of us will rise.
Yeah.
Like they've excelled at that now.
Yeah.
Whereas you have Captain America's a Golden Age person influencing the Dark Age. He's talking to Nick Fury and he's talking to Natasha and showing them that no, you don't have to live this super shady dark this dark way. You don't have to hide from the world like you are. Like you can be who you are and strive for goodness, and that is good. And it's just interesting to watch how these ages are not set in stone and unreachable, but are actually communicating to one another.
But we keep talking about Hydra and how fascinating it is that it's developed as it has, maybe we should explain. Hydra has for years been infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
And it has slowly grown to the point that it's almost a 50-50 split between what members of S.H.I.E.L.D. are loyal to Nick Fury and Cap and what members are loyal to the ideals of Hydra. And they're sort of shadow leaders there.
Yeah.
So with that, you have lasting effects not only on the Captain America franchise, but on the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. television show.
Mm-hmm.
Because
the ending.
you no longer you no longer get to have S.H.I.E.L.D. there to clean up messes. And you also, so that's one side of this. Also, you now have the new threat that Hydra is out there.
Yeah.
And like the Hydra philosophy says, like, Hydra is not done by the end of the movie.
No,
like,
not at all.
We see in the after credits that Hydra has a lot to play in at least the Avengers 2, if not Avengers 2, and everything else coming out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see. And you got to think about, like, their new approach has been very technology-based, which makes you think about other universes, too. It makes me personally think about Jarvis, who's already been acting a little strange in a couple of the movies. It makes me think about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of their technology. And how is that going to be an issue if Hydra gets into that?
We know Ultron's going to be an issue at some point.
We're getting a Hank Pym movie.
Well, and that's the thing is that, like, when you look at what the Avengers movies seem to be doing, like the first one, the main villain in the first Avengers, it was Loki.
Yeah.
And so with this next one, with the after credits scene, it looks like they're setting up Hydra to be the more
Ultron. Yeah.
But that makes you wonder, like, is it gonna be a thing where like will Hydra get a hold of Jarvis or something, or whatever Ultron ends up being? Yeah. Well, I think everyone was assuming that Ultron would be like a Tony Stark creation that goes haywire, but will it be a Hydra thing? Like, and it actually just makes me wonder if for each Avengers movie they're going to sort of like pull out a villain from one of the single franchise, then sort
and
of
make it the
then make that the spotlight, which makes it makes you wonder, like for Avengers 3 and Thanos and Guardians of the Galaxy.
Absolutely.
Well, also, just as a side note, something that's really interesting is that with that Loki storyline from the first Avengers movie, that was a Golden Age story that was being told.
Yes.
And when we're moving our way into the future of Marvel here, Age of Ultron is a Silver Age concept that was developed.
And we have Guardians of the Galaxy, which is very, I would say, Silver Age mindset of outer space adventure.
Very Silver Age mindset, but with the modern take on the characters that have been going on. But Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, characters that we know are coming in, Vision, these are all Silver Age things. So we can see that Marvel has taken this idea of working the various ages of comics into some sort of mixture here, that's working together to tell a prolonged story.
It's incorporating the history of comic book telling itself into its storytelling. It's honoring the past of this genre and the beauty of going from the Golden Age to now the Dark Age, while telling stories, while continuing to tell stories that have been affected by each of those ages. It's really interesting because it's Marvel. It's showing, like, I mean, obviously Marvel's smart. It's Marvel's nodding to the past while creating stories for the future. All that to say, although Hydra is going to be a game changer for the universe, the Marvelverse itself, it was also nice to see a movie where, for the one of the first times I'd say in the more recent movies, I was not offended or troubled by the fact that no other heroes swooped in. So, like, if you see Iron Man 3, you're watching it the entire time thinking, okay, S.H.I.E.L.D. should have showed up by now. Where's Cap? If you're watching
the President of the United States has been kidnapped and it's being televised.
Right. S.H.I.E.L.D., for what it stands for, should be on this at some point. You look at Thor and you're like, okay, alien invasion. Once again, the last time this happened, you had the Avengers show up.
Yeah.
So if aliens show up in England, you think at least Iron Man would be rocketing over there.
Procedure at least would dictate that S.H.I.E.L.D. should look into every bit of alien activity.
Yeah, exactly. But this is the first time, and I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. maybe had an after episode with Thor 2.
They did have an episode,
but
where
it almost
was
seemed
like
like
after, but
almost
but
like a polite nod to the movie than actually being engaged in the universe.
Of course.
But I will say that one thing that this movie makes me think of is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. First off, for me, Captain America the Winter Soldier is what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. should be.
Right.
It is the spy action show. It's not just kids on the magic school bus going to collect the occasional item that kind of has a relationship to the cinematic universe. Maybe not really, a little bit.
It should be grappling with, like, the moral tensions of the S.H.I.E.L.D., of being a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
Which is why I really enjoyed this movie, first off, because it did that.
Yes.
But also, it has opened the door for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to do that. And if you've been keeping up with recent episodes, the events of this movie have impacted that world.
That's good.
And it's actually been really, really good to see this, because I think it's been the most development you've seen in the show.
Oh yeah, and just watching the show, it's like those last 2 episodes where this movie went into Winter Soldier territory. It gave the show so much more of a focus. Like, and it was one of the things you can just immediately notice it.
It really gave them a great sort of catalyst for the end of the season.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where for me, like for most of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it felt like they just weren't sure what they wanted to do, and that immediately changed.
At the same time, Captain America is going to be affecting the Marvel Universe, but it's also a very good self-contained action movie.
Oh,
It
yeah,
is.
of
Like,
course, yeah.
you don't watch the movie and think, like I said, where's Iron Man, where's Hulk, where's Thor? Like, you watch the movie and you're like, no, all these things make sense that nobody else would be dealing with them except for Captain America. Because it's an espionage movie.
It is.
It's an action movie.
Yeah.
And it's all about S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's all about S.H.I.E.L.D.'s
This is the stuff that Tony Stark isn't going to be noticing because it's not on his
Well,
radar.
yeah, because I mean, even with a lot of the action scenes, with like maybe kind of the exception of the third act, they're still like down low enough to feel like they're not having world shaking implications. Like I love that first scene where Nick Fury gets attacked. It's not he doesn't get attacked by robots or something. It's literally a bunch of SWAT vans come up, surround his car, and just start shooting at him.
Yeah,
They do a wonderful job of reminding us this is Marvel. We have this larger story in play. But for reasons that make sense within this story, it's very grounded in what it is. And for instance, I think the best one, again, it's that Nick Fury scene there that really says it. He's trying to get out of there at one point, and something about, like, get me out of here to the car, and it's like, flight mode is no longer operational or something. And I'm like, oh, that's right, they have all sorts of crazy repulsor technology that could get him out of here. But because it's been damaged in this particular fight, it's going to stay a strong, well-paced action flick that's not just going to use its magic mumbo-jumbo to get itself out of these situations, nor is it going to simply ignore the fact that this tech has existed.
And, like, we've been talking a lot about how this movie's nodding towards comics and comic book storytelling, and how Marvel in general is doing that. But I would just say, out of the Marvel movies, this is the first time I feel like they were also nodding to movies. Like, this movie felt like an honoring of action flicks in general. Because it felt very, like, if you didn't know anything about Captain America or anything about the Marvel Universe, you would still love this movie. Because it's if you like Die Hard, you'd love this movie. Because that high-paced action-adventure espionage thrillers.
Well, you look at the references that you get there. In trying to make this all-American hero, they basically copied some of the all-American heroes that we've had in the past. So I'm thinking of Harrison Ford's characters that we've seen in a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Jack Ryan movie. It's there's a lot.
I think it's a better Jack Ryan movie than the actual Jack Ryan movie that we got.
But it's also it's a lot like an Indiana Jones flick. The first movie was very Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is kind of Last Crusade, and it's that you can't trust anyone, Dr. Jones sort of situation. That's pretty much what's going on. We even have the fugitive, for crying out loud. Cap is on the run.
He has a metal arm.
And there's the man with the mechanical arm who really did it. So it's honoring to all of these things. You enjoy it. But it's not too distracting.
Yeah.
It's just makes a really good, well-paced action movie. And I think that was part of what was desired for this stage 2 of the Marvel movies, was not to just keep telling superhero origin stories.
Right.
So Iron Man 3 became a buddy cop movie. Ant-Man looks like it's going to be a heist. Guardians of the Galaxy is the space-based adventure. This movie got to be just the action flick.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that they've got this long-term game plan that's going on here that allows them to continue to provide us what we enjoy, which is a superhero movie, but also doing it in different ways, which isn't going to burn out the superhero trend as fast as it really could.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll just keep this up, and we know from the end credits that we can expect more heroes. We know that we've got Stephen Strange somehow coming along the way. From that reference.
Wonderful.
That'll be fun. Yeah, I'm just really excited seeing what they continue to do with the cinematic universe, and the implications for both the S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show and for Netflix's upcoming Marvel series that it's going to be working on.
Yeah. It left, so if you went just for the action adventure thriller, you got exactly what you wanted. But if you wanted to see more of the Marvel Universe unfolding, it was also like a great way for you to walk away thinking of all the implications that are going to be implemented in the upcoming movies. All right, guys. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I've just been consistently impressed by how much better the movies are getting. Like, I mean, I liked the first Captain America, but this really does just take the quality to such a new level, and I think it shows that they're looking at what they've done, and they're looking at how they can improve, and so it makes me really excited to see how the franchise will go in the future.
I'm enjoying the simple fact that we can have the individual superhero movie, and have it still be enjoyable, interesting, again, build to something larger. I'm glad that after the Avengers, we aren't bored by this.
Yes.
And I think that was kind of my worry a little bit, because of Iron Man 3, it didn't quite work for me. I know that a lot of people really enjoyed it, but in some ways it felt like it kind of fizzled off of the tail end of Avengers, which was a really great high point for Iron Man. Whereas Thor 2 then kind of carried on Avengers again, and it seemed to continue a little bit more of that energy. But it was nice to see the standalone hero movie starting from scratch, which is what you have to do when Cap is now thrust into this modern world.
Yeah, I think for me, I would say like this was, like we've been talking about, just a great movie. Both for people who aren't comic book fans, you're going to get a great action movie that you're going to enjoy with lots of interesting characters. And for comic book fans, you're going to get a lot of nods to comic book storytelling, a lot of nods to comic book minor characters that you would care about, and interesting implications for what the Marvelverse is going to become.
Okay, well, thanks for listening to us tonight, and join us next time for when we talk about the pros and many cons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. See ya.